Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In part 4 of the series, the Tablighi Jamaat, there was discussion about the practical steps that Jamaat takes to bring in the qualities that are essential for doing the work of Dawah and Tabligh. We discussed the first quality, the firm belief in Allah and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. And as was mentioned last time, this is mentioned so many, this is talk that's done regularly every day, so many times, so that the reality of the kalima comes into the heart of the people who are doing this work. Unless the greatness of Allah comes into the hearts of the people, it will not be possible for them to do this work. And also the greatness of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. One of the things the Jamaat does is to do things according to the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The way he used to eat, the way he used to dress up, the way he used to sleep, all the things, all the minute details about his life. It is an amazing fact of history that there's not a single person in the entire history of mankind about whom so much is known, even after 1400 years. Even the minutest details of his life are known, and not only known, they are practiced by millions of people. This is one of the living miracles of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There are millions of people around the world who imitate him in every respect, from the dress, from the way he used to walk, the way he used to talk. And this, of course, comes by learning. A lot of Muslims are not aware how Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam spent 24 hours. You see, we know how he used to pray, we know how he used to fast, how he performed Hajj. The closest to him in terms of time is Isa alayhi salam, Prophet Jesus, who lived 500-600 years before him. But we don't have any details about his life the way we have the details about the life of Rasulullah. How many times he prayed, what he said in the prayer, and not only the Quran is preserved, which unlike the previous prophets, the holy books have not been preserved the way the Quran has been preserved through memorization, but also his ways. And this is amazing that in this work, in Tablighi Jamaat work, people go out to learn the Sunnah, and not just to talk about it, but actually start doing it. And that's why you see the people who are going out in the Jamaat, you can recognize that these people are different from the general population. Why? Because they're trying to live their lives according to the Sunnah. And this is the training of the Jamaat. You see, having a conference, having a seminar once in a while for 2-3 days, praising Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and writing books, that's one way of doing it. And the other way is actually to adopt those practices and start living that. And this is something that Maulana Ilyas started doing in this work. So wherever the Jamaats are going, whether they're going to the United States, whether they're going to Australia, England, or wherever, you see, you can recognize these people from the way of the Sunnah. And this is something that people are ashamed of. As I said in the last part, that the British worked very hard to make the Sunnah look ridiculous, to look something backward. And the Muslims started feeling embarrassed to practice the Sunnah. So when the Jamaats go, they are trying to learn the ways of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, not only the way he used to dress up, but the way he invited people. So everything about his life is important. And this is a big contribution of Maulana Ilyas, that he uh, put a program in place where people actually start doing it. And that's why the Jamaats, uh, they don't make speeches just for the sake of making a speech. They say the purpose of the speech or the talk is to make people do the work. So after every talk, they ask people to give time so that they can go out and start learning this and see the importance of the Sunnah. So Rasulullah's Sunnah is approved by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the help of Allah is with the way of the Prophet. So the Quran talks about Rasulullah as the best model, as the best example. And the best example is not just in the speeches, is in his life. So this quality is very essential for the Da'i, that he is imitating Rasulullah in everything. So the Tablighi Jamaat is doing this work to bring the Sunnah back into the lives of the Muslims, that they don't feel embarrassed. During the British times, there was a big effort on the part of the British rulers to bring in the British ways, the Western ways, which were adopted by the Muslims, from the dress, from the mannerisms, from the way they used, time they used to spend. They forgot the purpose of Rasulullah. So this work has tried to accomplish that the Muslims understand why this ummah is so important and why the life of Rasulullah is so important. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has protected all the details of his life. This is an amazing fact that without any technology at that time, without the cameras and the videos and all this technology which is now available, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserved the Quran, He preserved the Sunnah, and all the details that are important for people to know. So in this work, when the Jamaats go out from place to place, inviting people to join this work, they're practicing the Sunnah. And when they start coming into this work, then of course they realize that the first most important thing in the life of Rasulullah was that salat, praying 5 times a day daily. And this is another tragedy in the Ummah, that most Muslims have stopped praying. And there's no Islam without salat. Salat is like the head in the body. You cannot have a human being, a live human being, without a head. So salat is so important that it was unthinkable for Sahaba to spend their time without doing salat. And this is a tragedy that Maulana Ilyas saw, that a lot of people who claim to be champions of Islam and claim to be the great followers of Rasulullah and who claim to be great lovers of Rasulullah, but there is no salat in their life. So imagine the times Allah has mentioned salat in the Quran and the hadith about salat. And this is something where the Jamaat is teaching the people how to perform the salat properly. And of course, when you're in Jamaat, you're in the environment of the Jamaat, then the chances of not doing salat are not there. You see, that's why it's important to come out of the environment of the homes, the environment of the business, and so on and so on. Why they ask for time is so that people get into this habit, that this becomes part of their schedule. So whatever they're doing, this becomes so much part of their life that they cannot think of a life without salat. And this, once again, is another important thing that distinguishes Maulana Muhammad Ilyas from the other efforts that are going on or have been going on. Because in other efforts, there is the talk, there is the material, the ulama talk about the importance, but there's no follow-up as to whether people are actually getting into the habit of doing it. So once they spend a good deal of time with the Jamaat, they come back and it becomes a part of their life. So not only the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but the Salat becomes a part of the life, and then they start getting the benefits of that. So Maulana Ilyas was teaching them that Islam without amal is not present. To have Islam in the lives, to have the Quran in our lives, one has to do what is required by the Quran, what is required by the life of Rasulullah. So making speeches is not going to be a substitute for doing this practice. So when the Jamaats are going and traveling from place to place, they are actually living that in their daily lives. And of course, a lot of people who come there, sometimes there are people who have never made a single salat in their whole life. And there are people who have all kinds of habits. There are stories about people who were addicts, who were alcoholics. Well, when they went through the program, their lives changed. They came out clean. And this is amazing fact that this is a rehab program also, if one can say it, for people whose lives are completely out of Islam. Many people's lives have changed just by going in the Jamaat, following the program, going through the daily talks and doing salat in Jamaat and visiting people. They come back very different. And of course, listening to talks once in a while or going to seminars and lectures once in a while will have some effect. But when you're actually in the environment of people who are doing this on a daily basis, then it's going to have a big impact. So there are so many stories of people with all kinds of different backgrounds who have gone through this program properly, with sincerity. Their lives have changed and they start seeing the benefits of the Sunnah. And the emphasis on the practices of Rasulullah every day, all the time, has effect on the hearts of the people, because the hearts can get hardened. If the heart is a person is an environment where there is no deen, he becomes resistant to these practices which are very easy to follow. And of course, the other quality that is necessary is that to learn Islam, one has to have the knowledge of Islam. One has to get into the habit of going to scholars, going to people who have knowledge to learn from them. And this is one of the reasons, one of the purposes of Jamaat is to make people aware, make them conscious that they need to know. As was said in the previous programs, that when the British came, they tried to create a distance between the Muslim and the Quran and the Sunnah. And they started teaching them things that were completely opposed to the Quran and Sunnah. The thinking was changed. So the Muslims started taking pride in poetry, in literature, in culture, things like that, not realizing they had no knowledge of what Allah wants from them, to the extent that if you look at the judgments of the courts, the Muslims who were trained by the British as judges, as lawyers, you will see the references are not to the Quran and Sunnah. The references are to the British and the American judges and British literature, Shakespeare and British poets and Western writers. And till this day you see that. You see the same thinking among the educated classes, that they are talking in their judgments or in their speeches, the references are not to Allah. They're not quoting from the Quran or the Sunnah or the Hadith. They're quoting from Western literature because that's how they've been trained. So in the court system and in the educational system, all the references, as if this is the epitome, as if this is the peak of human knowledge. So the Muslims forgot that the knowledge that came from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the real knowledge. So the British substituted that, they took that out, and they brought the knowledge that they had and made the educated people, educated in the British traditions, in the British culture, they made them the heads of the institutions, of all the top leading institutions. And this continues till this day. So the Mulana realized that until the people have respect, regard, greatness of Allah and the greatness of Rasulullah, they will not be able to practice Islam. You see, a lot of Muslims, they love Islam, they claim to be great champions of Islam, but they do not understand what are the requirements of the deen. So inshallah, this will continue, and the qualities that Maulana Ilyas tried to inculcate into the people, and which is done by the Jamaat all over the world, will be discussed as to how these things or these qualities are very important for doing the work of dawah and tabligh. Wa akhir dawana in alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.